Adam and his little daughter Emma were walking along a forest path when they turned onto a short stretch and came out onto an unusual clearing. In the center of the clearing was a fresh hole resembling a grave. Next to it lay a man and a woman, the woman unconscious, and next to her a little boy was crying, his clothes and face smeared with mud, tears mixing with the dirt on his cheeks. Next to the pit stood an open wooden coffin, its lid lying to one side, as if someone had thrown it away in a hurry. The boy was screaming, his voice filled with pain, repeating the same thing over and over. "Mom, why aren't you talking? Mom?" He tried to touch her, to shake her shoulder, but his mother did not respond. Adam's life had recently been struck by a cruel tragedy. His wife had died in a car accident, leaving him alone with his daughter Emma. Overcome with grief, his main concern now was to protect Emma. Today they had gone to this forest to honor his wife's memory, as it had been her favorite place. Hoping that the walk would help them cope with their loss, they turned off the main trail to take a shorter route, which led them to this terrible, unknown place. Adam and his daughter Emma found themselves in a strange clearing, where a pit caught their attention. Adam initially assumed it was a scene from a movie or some kind of prank, but the sound of a boy crying from the depths of the pit dispelled his doubts. Adam's heart sank with horror when he realized that there were living people in the pit, whom someone was trying to bury alive. Looking around, Adam noticed the body of a man lying next to the pit. He was dead. Suddenly, Adam felt that someone was watching them. He squeezed Emma's hand tightly, pulling her close to him, realizing that they were now in great danger. Suddenly, two people dressed in black appeared from behind the trees. One of them was holding a shovel while the other was just watching. They looked at Adam and Emma, and Adam immediately realized that these were the people who had tried to bury the woman and the boy. It was unclear what had compelled them to do such a thing, and Adam, with anxiety in his heart, shifted his gaze from them to the pit, to the body. Horror overwhelmed him, and Emma sobbed. Adam realized they needed to flee, but he couldn't leave these people in such a situation. The man with the shovel approached Adam. Adam stepped back, shielding Emma with his body. His heart pounded in his chest as he froze, staring into the eyes of the approaching man. They were empty, devoid of any emotion except cold determination. The second man, who had been standing silently nearby, said something in an unknown language. Adam realized that his life was not in danger yet, but the situation could change if they did something wrong. He glanced into the pit. The boy was still sobbing, and the woman was lying motionless. Adam realized that he had to act decisively. He looked at Emma and with excitement in his voice said, "Run. Go away and don't come back." Emma didn't understand what was happening and just looked at her father with confusion. Adam stepped forward, trying to distract the men. He shouted, "What are you doing? Why are you doing this?" The man with the shovel remained silent, only raising it and pointing it at Adam. Adam realized that dialogue was useless. He had to fight to save himself, his daughter, and all these people. Adam, a simple office worker with no martial arts skills, was ready to do anything to protect his daughter. Looking at the pit, the two men, and his opponents, he realized that he had to go beyond his premeditated plan to achieve an unexpected effect, and he did something no one had anticipated. Adam stared at one of the men and said, "I know who you are. I've met you before." It wasn't true, but he hoped it would confuse them. One of the men froze, his face pierced with surprise. The second one stopped too. Adam saw that his tactic had worked. He took advantage of this pause and turned to Emma. "Run!" Emma finally realized it was time to run. She turned and sprinted into the forest. The men were confused. One of them asked, "Why is she running?" The other just shrugged. "I don't know, he said something." Their eyes fell on Adam. Adam realized that his plan had worked, and now he had to come up with something to distract them even more, while Emma managed to hide. Looking into the pit, he realized that he couldn't leave people in trouble. He couldn't just abandon them. Adam took another step forward and calmly declared, "I'm calling the police. You're not getting away." It was a lie. He didn't have a phone, but the men, as if sensing a change in the atmosphere, froze. Their eyes darted between him and the forest, where Emma was quickly disappearing. They realized it was time to leave. One of the men struck Adam on the head with a shovel. Adam fell, but managed to see his attackers hiding in the woods. In agony, he lost consciousness. When he woke up, Adam found that the pit was empty. Neither the woman nor the boy were there. Getting up, he went into the woods and found Emma. The girl was sitting leaning against a tree, waiting anxiously for him. Adam gently stroked her head and hugged her. But one troubling thought kept running through his mind. Where had the people who were trying to bury the woman and child gone? And where were the two who were guarding them? Adam didn't believe they had simply vanished into thin air. They were somewhere nearby, and that thought terrified him. He realized that now he and Emma were the next targets. Taking Emma by the hand, he led her out of the forest without looking back. Adam knew that this was only the beginning of their dangerous journey. He needed to find these people to understand their motives and protect his daughter from further danger. Adam felt a throbbing pain in his temple. The spot where he had been struck burned. His head was spinning, but he squeezed Emma's hand even tighter so as not to let her go for a second. They ran, paying no attention to the road, just rushing away from that place. The sunlight no longer carried the warmth and kindness it had at the beginning of the day. Every shadow from the trees seemed threatening, and every rustle in the bushes made them both jump in fright. Emma was silent, her small hand trembling in her father's. Her eyes were empty and full of fear, but there were no tears. Adam knew that this day would be forever etched in her memory. Reaching the country road, Adam stopped and looked around. The air was clearer, but the fear did not leave him. He looked at Emma. Her face was pale and covered with dirt, and there was a wound on her knee. "Are you hurt, dear?" Adam asked. Emma nodded but said nothing. He hugged her close. His heart ached to see how frightened she looked. Adam felt guilty because he was the one who had brought her to this dangerous place. They walked along the road until their car appeared. Adam immediately opened the door, put Emma in the back seat, and locked it. He got behind the wheel, started the engine, and drove off. His destination remained unknown. It was dangerous to go home because he didn't understand who these people were or what motivated them. The decision came naturally, to go to his friend Mark. He was the only one Adam could trust with his secret. The journey took a long time. Adam drove slowly, constantly looking in the rearview mirror. He felt like someone was watching him, and the feeling wouldn't go away, as if he were paranoid. Emma fell asleep in the back seat, and her quiet breathing gave Adam strength. He stopped at Mark's house, a small house on the outskirts of town. Adam quickly woke Emma up, picked her up, and headed for the door. He knocked, and Mark opened the door, looking surprised to see Adam and his daughter. "Adam, what happened? What's wrong with you?" Mark asked, noticing the wound on Adam's body and the frightened expression on Emma's face. Adam quickly went inside, looked back, and closed the door without delay. "Mark, we're in serious trouble," Adam said, and told Mark everything in detail, about the pit, the woman, the boy, and the two men. Mark listened attentively, without interrupting. He was shocked, but he trusted Adam. "We need to go to the police," Mark said. Adam shook his head. "I already went there. They didn't believe me. They said I made it all up." Mark looked at him. "But you have a wound, don't you?" Adam showed him the bruises on his head. Mark shook his head again. "I don't understand. Maybe they were on the side of the police?" Adam nodded. "Maybe. I don't know. But I'm sure we're in danger." Mark helped Adam treat his wound, and then they went to bed. Adam couldn't sleep. His thoughts were occupied with the woman and the boy. What had happened to them? Where had they been taken? He had to find them. Had to find out what had happened. When he woke up in the morning, Adam found Mark already in the kitchen, making breakfast. Emma was sitting at the table, drawing. A smile settled in his heart, and he felt protected. "Adam, are you sure you don't want to go to the police?" Mark asked. "No," Adam replied. "I have to find them myself. I don't trust anyone." Mark nodded in understanding. "Okay, I'll help you. What's the matter?" Adam looked at him. "I'm going back to the forest." Mark frowned. "Why?" "It's dangerous there. I need to find something that will help me find them," Adam said seriously. He gently kissed Emma's forehead. "I'll be back soon," he said. Leaving the house, he got in his car and headed back to the forest. Adam returned to the forest, where the sun was already high in the sky, breaking through the thick canopy of trees. However, the forest was silent. permeated by an eerie atmosphere. Adam parked his car not far from where he and Emma had turned off the road. Getting out of the car, he looked around and set off along the familiar path, his heart beating faster with every step, the memories of yesterday causing his body to tremble. Adam doubted the correctness of his actions, but he understood that he could not remain inactive, sitting at home and waiting for people to find him and Emma. He had to take action to protect his daughter. He came out onto the clearing where the pit had been. The place was completely different. The pit had been filled in, the ground leveled as if there had never been a burial there. No coffin, no body of the murdered man, no traces whatsoever. Adam came closer and felt the ground. It was still loose. Kneeling down, he began to search unsuccessfully for something, any clue, any hint. Time passed, but nothing was found. Disappointment and despair took hold of him more and more. Adam was about to leave when something shiny caught his eye, hidden in the thicket. He moved closer and found a small medallion. It was covered in dirt, but Adam could read the inscription engraved on it. "To my beloved son, Lucas." Adam realized that it belonged to the boy. It was the only trace he had left. He carefully picked up the medallion, put it in his pocket, and continued his search. Adam didn't know what he was looking for, but he kept wandering through the forest, hoping for unexpected finds. Like a detective, he carefully examined every branch, every bush, every stone. Suddenly, he noticed tire tracks from a heavy vehicle on the road. Perhaps they belonged to the people he was looking for. Adam followed the tracks, which led him to an abandoned house, old and dilapidated, surrounded by a high fence. Lifting his head, Adam looked inside through the gate and saw a dirty car in the yard. Adam guessed that this was the place where these people were hiding. It would be too risky to go in without thinking. He returned to the forest and hid behind the trees, waiting for someone to come out of the house. He needed to see them to determine their identities. He waited a long time. Finally, two people emerged from the house. They were the same ones he had seen yesterday, one with a shovel, the other with nothing. They were dressed in simple clothes, got into the car, and disappeared from view. Adam watched them until he was sure they were far away, then came out of the woods and headed for the house. Being extremely careful not to be noticed, he climbed over the fence and walked to the dwelling. Approaching the door, he tried to open it, but it was locked. Peering through the window, he noticed that the house was dark, but he could still make out old, dusty things scattered on the floor. Adam came up with another solution. He noticed that a window on the second floor was slightly open. Looking for a suitable approach, he found an old ladder and climbed to the second floor. Climbing through the window, he found himself inside. The house smelled of dust and old furniture. Adam went through all the rooms but found nothing. He was about to leave, thinking he had made a mistake, when something on the wall caught his attention. A photograph of a woman and a boy. Adam recognized them. They were the very people they had tried to bury alive. Next to them was a man who was smiling. Adam immediately realized that this was the woman's husband and the boy's father. He recognized the man he had seen yesterday. Under the photo was the name Marion and Lucas. Adam's heart sank. He felt compelled to find them and find out what had happened. He continued his journey through the rooms and came across a diary. It was Marion's diary. Picking it up, he began to read. The pages told of the life they had built in this house, of the happiness that surrounded them, but then moved on to describe the problems that had arisen. Marion wrote that her husband, Marcos, was a businessman, and his actions had angered some dangerous people. They began to pursue them, demanding a ransom from Marcos for something. But Marcos refused to pay. Marion wrote that Marcos was forced to reveal where he had hidden the money, but he remained silent. Marion and Lucas were in danger, and she was afraid they would be killed. Adam guessed that this was what had happened. Marcos had been killed, and now they were trying to bury Marion and Lucas alive. But why? Why didn't they kill them right away? Perhaps they needed information from Marion about the location of the money. Adam was in shock. He didn't know what to do. He continued to flip through the pages of the diary. In the last entry, Marion said that they had hidden in the forest, hoping to be rescued. But no rescue came. She wrote that she had seen two men. She was sure they had come for them. Adam realized that he had to find Marion and Lucas. He had to save them, to finish what he had started. Taking the diary and the photo, he headed back to the window. through which he had entered, went down the stairs, and walked to his car. Adam left the abandoned house, clutching the diary and photo tightly in his hand. His heart was racing from the information he had received, which was both shocking and important. He was no longer just an observer, he was involved in a dangerous game. Now Adam understood that Marion and Lucas weren't just victims, they were fugitives. Starting his car, Adam put the diary and photo on the passenger seat and headed to Emma's to make sure she was safe. The drive home seemed endless. Adam kept looking back, his nerves on edge. Marion's words from the diary kept running through his mind. About fear, about trying to hide. Adam realized that his actions, his intervention, were not accidental. Fate had brought him to this forest for a specific purpose. He had to help them. He had to become their protector. Upon arriving at Mark's house, Adam found Emma sitting on the porch, waiting for him. He felt a wave of relief. He walked up to her, hugged her, and kissed her on the forehead. "I'm back, sweetheart. Everything's fine," he said. Emma smiled, her face beaming with joy at seeing her father. Together they entered the house. Mark was already in the kitchen, preparing dinner. Seeing Adam, he asked, "Well, did you find anything?" Adam showed him the diary and the photograph and told him everything he had learned. Mark was stunned. "Are they in hiding? And are those two pursuing them?" he asked calmly. Adam nodded in confirmation. "Yes, and they killed Marion's husband." Mark shook his head, expressing his concern. "This is all very risky, Adam. You need to stop this." Adam looked at him with determination. "I can't. I have to find them. I can't just leave them to their fate." Mark understood that Adam couldn't just give up. He was a father, and Mark himself knew what it meant to be responsible. "Don't worry, I'll help you," Mark said, and a smile appeared on Adam's face. He felt better because he wasn't alone. At the table, during lunch, Adam told Mark what he had read in the diary. Together they came to the conclusion that Marion and Lucas had someone who could help them, someone who was aware of their problems. They intended to find this person. The diary said that Marcos, Marion's husband, had a business partner, Eric, who was aware of all his affairs. Adam and Mark decided to look for Eric. Not knowing his whereabouts, they were sure that he must know where Marion and Lucas might be. They decided to use the information they had about Marcos as a starting point. Adam remembered that the diary mentioned the address of his office in the city center. Deciding to go there, they left Emma with a mutual friend and headed into town. The journey was long, and Adam and Mark discussed their plans. They realized that the upcoming mission would be risky, but they were ready to do whatever it took to accomplish their task and protect those who needed help. Upon arriving in the city, they headed to the high-rise building where Marcos's office was located. Inside, they went up to the right floor, but found that the office was closed and the door was locked. Their attempts to open it were unsuccessful. Adam realized that they needed to find an alternative route. Going downstairs, they asked the security guard where they could find Eric. The guard said that Eric had gone on vacation, but they didn't believe him because they felt that Eric simply didn't want to talk to them. Adam and Mark came to the conclusion that they needed to find Eric. Returning to the car, they drove to Mark's house, realizing that they needed a new plan of action. Adam and Mark, devastated by their failure to find Eric, returned to Mark's house. Their anxiety only intensified, not knowing what to do next. They entered the house where Emma was sitting on the couch watching a cartoon with interest. Her safety was paramount to Adam, and he hugged her and kissed her on the forehead. "I'll be back soon," he whispered, and went to the kitchen, where Mark was already pouring himself a cup of coffee. "We can't afford to give up," Adam said firmly. Mark nodded in agreement. "I understand, but what can we do? We don't know where they are." Adam took Marion's diary out of his pocket. "Maybe there's something in it we missed." They sat down at the table and immersed themselves in reading. They turned every page, scrutinizing every word. Suddenly, on one of the pages, something unusual caught their eye. An old photograph showed Marion, Lucas, and Marcos standing in front of a building. Eric was posing next to them. The caption read, "The family on vacation at our house in the mountains." Adam and Mark exchanged glances. "A house in the mountains?" Mark muttered. "Maybe that's the key to solving this mystery?" Adam nodded in agreement. "Maybe that's where they're hiding." They set off for the mountains. The journey was long and difficult, as they made their way along a narrow mountain road. Beautiful views surrounded them, but Adam and Mark didn't notice them, their thoughts completely absorbed by one goal: to find Marion and Lucas. Finally, they reached a small town hidden in the mountains. They asked the locals where they could find a house similar to the one in the photo, but no one could give them any information. Adam was upset. He was already thinking that they had reached a dead end when suddenly an old man spoke up. "I know that place. It's an old mansion that was bought by a wealthy businessman from the city. He used to come here with his wife and children, but then, for some reason, they stopped coming." Adam and Mark were thrilled. "Where exactly is this house?" Adam asked. The old man showed them the way, and they thanked him and set off along the road he had indicated. The road became narrower and steeper. Finally, they saw the house. It was grand and beautiful, but clearly abandoned. When they arrived at the house, they got out of the car. The door swung open, and they went inside. The house was silent. They walked through the rooms, but the house was empty. No furniture, no belongings, no signs that anyone had lived there. Adam and Mark were disappointed. They decided that this was the end and were about to leave when they suddenly heard a noise coming from the basement. Going down to the basement, they found it to be pitch black and damp. Turning on their flashlights, they began to look around. Old, dust-covered items lay on the floor. Suddenly, something caught their attention and made their hearts sink. An old bed with two people lying on it. It was Marion and Lucas, their faces pale and their bodies motionless. Adam immediately rushed to them and checked their pulses. Fortunately, they were still alive. Adam and Mark, realizing that Marion and Lucas needed urgent medical attention, carefully lifted them up and began to climb the stairs. Suddenly, when they were almost out of the basement, the door slammed shut with a loud bang, trapping them inside. A voice came out of the darkness. "I've been waiting for you." Adam and Mark froze, unable to move. The voice was unfamiliar, but it had an iron confidence about it. A man emerged from the shadows, and Adam recognized him immediately. It was Eric, whose photo had been in Marcos's house. "Did you think I wouldn't be able to find you?" Eric said with a smirk. Adam and Mark were in shock. Eric was here, and he was the one who had kidnapped Marion and Lucas. Adam and Mark found themselves in a hopeless situation. Not knowing what to do, they were at a loss. Eric burst out laughing. "Did you think you could outsmart me? Did you think you were the smartest? But you were wrong. Now you'll all be buried here." Adam and Mark realized that they had to act decisively and quickly. They had to get out of this trap immediately. Adam and Mark found themselves in the pitch darkness of the basement, locked in by Eric. His angry voice echoed through the room like an echo. They were in a hopeless trap. Adam rushed to the door and tried to unlock it, but it was securely locked. "He locked us in," Adam whispered. "What should we do?" Mark asked anxiously. Panic seized them. They had to get out of there quickly before Eric did something terrible. Suddenly, they heard footsteps coming down the stairs. It was Eric. He stopped on the stairs and looked at them. His lips stretched into a smile. Adam met his gaze. "What did you do to them?" he asked. "Did you poison them? Or are they just unconscious?" Eric replied with a smile. "They're just unconscious. I gave them a sleeping pill. They'll wake up soon, and then I'll finish what I started." Adam was in shock. Was Eric capable of such cruelty? "Why are you doing this?" Adam couldn't help asking. "Why do you want to bury them alive?" Eric met his gaze. They knew about Marcos's theft. They knew where he hid the money. But they kept quiet. They were willing to die rather than betray me. Adam realized that this was revenge. Eric wanted them to pay for what they knew. Adam realized that he had to act decisively. He glanced at Mark, and Mark understood him instantly. They had to distract Eric. "We know where the money is. We can give it to you," Adam said. Eric was shocked. "Really? You know where it is?" he asked, not believing his ears. Adam nodded. "Yes, we found it in Marion's diary." Eric was delighted. "Where is it?" "Give it to me." Adam took the diary out of his pocket. "Here it is, but you have to release us first." Eric laughed. "Do you think I'm that naive? I won't let you go until I get what I want." Adam nodded. In that case, we won't give you the diary. Eric was overcome with rage. He pulled out his gun and pointed it at Adam. Give me the diary or I'll kill you right now. Adam was desperate. He hadn't anticipated this turn of events. He glanced at Mark, who was clearly frightened. Suddenly, Marion regained consciousness. She saw Eric and was overcome with fear. In her fear, she clutched Lucas tightly, pressing him against her. Eric stared at her. You're awake? Good. Now tell me where the money is, or I'll kill your boy. Marion was in a panic. Her gaze fell on Adam, and he knew he had to act. The diary fell to the floor. Eric glanced at it, and at that very moment, Adam lunged at him. He hit his arm, and the gun flew out of his hands. Eric was stunned, not expecting such aggression. Adam and Mark rushed at Eric. Eric, being strong, fended off their attacks. He hit Adam in the face, and he fell. Mark responded with a blow to Eric. The fight went on for a long time. Finally, Adam managed to get up, grabbed a crowbar, and hit Eric hard on the head. Eric fell unconscious. Adam and Mark were in shock. They couldn't believe they had done it. In a hurry, they freed Marion and Lucas, who were frightened. Adam hugged them, comforting them. Everything will be fine. We saved you. They left the basement, got in the car, and drove away. They were safe, but Adam knew that this was only the beginning. It was clear to him that something had to be done about Eric. They decided to take him to the police. They called and told them everything that had happened. Adam, Mark, Marion, and Lucas raced in the car toward the city. There was a tense silence in the car, broken only by Lucas's quiet sobs. Marion held him close, gently stroking his head, while she herself trembled from the shock of what had happened. Adam and Mark sat in the front, feeling tired, but also immensely relieved that they had managed to save people. Without hesitation, Adam took out his phone and called the police to report what had happened and tell them about Eric. We're on our way to the city, to the hospital. The children are injured, Adam said on the phone, and the police promised to meet them at the entrance to the medical facility. When they arrived, they saw a whole task force. Police cars, ambulances, doctors. It was like something out of a movie. Adam and Mark got out of the car and handed Marion and Lucas over to the doctors. The children were frightened, but Adam said gently, You're safe. Everything's fine. Marion looked at him and smiled faintly as if to express her gratitude. Erica, who was lying unconscious, was taken away by the police. They said he would be held responsible for all his actions. Adam and Mark went to the police station to give their statements. They described everything in detail: the diary, the photo, how they found Marion and Lucas, and the fight with Eric. The officers listened to them in amazement, unable to believe that ordinary people could have stood up to such a threat. You are true heroes, said one of the officers. But Adam just shook his head and said, No, we just did what was necessary. They were saved by us. After giving their statements, they went to the hospital to visit Marion and Lucas. They were lying in a separate ward, sleeping peacefully. Adam and Mark just sat there, admiring their peacefulness and rejoicing that they were alive. When the next day came, Adam and Mark returned home. Emma was already waiting for them at Mark's house. Adam hugged her gently and said, It's okay, dear. We saved them. Emma smiled, her face glowing with pride for her father. In Mark's kitchen, they enjoyed a cup of coffee. We did it, Mark proclaimed. Yes, Adam agreed, we did it. In his heart, however, there was a note of concern. The nightmare, though over, had left deep wounds. Marion and Lucas had been saved, but they had a long way to go to start a new life and put the horror they had experienced behind them. Adam felt he couldn't just leave them on that path. He felt compelled to help them. Together with Mark, they decided to help them as a family. A few days later, Marion and Lucas were discharged from the hospital and found temporary shelter at Adam's house. Their home quickly became a real family atmosphere. Over dinner, Marion shared her experiences with Adam, telling him about how they had lived and the fear that had gripped them. She told him about Marcos's kindness, but also how his business connections had turned out to be deadly dangerous. Marion described their attempts to escape, which had been unsuccessful. Adam listened with understanding, empathizing with her pain and fear. He was glad that they were safe and that Lucas was now with them. Together, they were building a new life, Adam Emma, Marion, and Lucas, and their happiness was complete. But Adam couldn't forget that this was only the beginning. He understood that those who had once hired Eric might return, and he was ready to defend his family to the end. Several weeks flew by, and their life took on a measured, calm rhythm. Adam went to work, and Emma and Lucas, like real brother and sister, spent time together, playing games. Marion, busy with household chores, gradually returned to normal life, finding peace and tranquility in this new, safe place. They spent their evenings together as a family, dining at the same table, and talking about simple things. Adam shared funny stories from work, and Marion reminisced about her former life, talking about Marcos. Outwardly, Adam seemed calm, but in reality, he was constantly on alert. He always locked the doors, checked the windows, and kept a close eye on everything that was happening outside the house. One evening, when Emma and Lucas were already asleep, Adam and Marion stayed in the kitchen. "I still can't believe," Marion admitted, "that Marcos ended up in such a difficult situation. He was always such a noble person." Adam nodded in agreement. "Life often throws up surprises, especially when it comes to large sums of money," he remarked. Marion fell into deep thought. "He never told me all the details of what actually happened. He just talked about problems and urged us to be careful. But I couldn't have imagined that it was so serious." Suddenly, Adam's phone rang. An unknown number appeared on the screen. Adam picked up the phone. "Hello," he said. In response, a hoarse, unpleasant voice said, "Mr. Adam, we can find you, and we know what you did." Adam's heart sank. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice trembling. "It doesn't matter," the voice replied coldly. "What matters is that you have taken what belongs to us. We will get it back, by any means necessary." The call ended. Adam was shocked. He stared at Marion. "They found us," he whispered, his voice trembling. Marion's face was pale. Her eyes reflected the frightening reality. Their nightmare was just beginning. Adam got up and went to Emma and Lucas's room. They were sleeping peacefully. Adam looked at them, and a fierce protective instinct ignited in his heart. He couldn't let his children get hurt. Returning to the kitchen, he said to Marion, "We have to leave. We can't stay here. It's too dangerous." Marion nodded. "Where will we go?" she asked. Adam didn't know the answer. He sat down at the table and sank into thought. He understood that they needed to leave, but he had no idea where to go. Deciding to take action, he called Mark and told him everything. "They found you?" "How did that happen?" Mark asked. "I don't know," Adam replied, "but we need to hide. Can you help us?" Mark paused for a moment. "I have a friend who can help. He deals with these kinds of things. He can help you hide and find those who are after you." Adam felt a sense of relief wash over him. "Thank you, Mark. You're a true friend," he said. "You're welcome," Mark replied. "I'll pick you up tomorrow morning and we'll go together." Adam hung up and turned to Marion. "We're leaving tomorrow," he announced. Marion nodded in agreement. "Okay." Adam felt his anxiety subside a little. They were ready to do this to protect their children from danger. The next day, Mark arrived with a friend named Chris. Chris was a tall, muscular man with short hair and a stern expression. His military background had left its mark. He was excellent at hiding and defending himself from enemies. He looked at Adam and Marion. "I know your story," Chris said. "Mark told me everything. I can help you, but you must follow my instructions without question." Adam and Marion agreed. They gathered their belongings, taking only the bare essentials and leaving everything else behind to be on the safe side. Then they got into Chris's car. He drove very carefully, constantly looking in the mirrors, knowing that they might be being followed. It was a long drive until they finally arrived in an unfamiliar town, where Chris took them to a small house. "This is our refuge," he said. "You'll be safe here. No one will find you." Adam and Marion were grateful. They entered the house. It was small but cozy. They felt safe. But Adam knew that this was only a temporary solution. He knew they couldn't just hide. They had to find these people. They had to figure out what they wanted. They had to protect their children. Chris's house was small but very cozy. Adam and his new family quickly settled in. Emma and Lucas slept in one room, Marion in another, and Adam in the living room. Mark stayed with them for the night. The next morning, they all gathered in the kitchen. Chris poured coffee. He was very serious. "We need to talk," he said. "We can't just sit here and wait for them to come for us." Adam nodded. "I know, but what can we do? We don't know who they are." Chris looked at him. "I can find out. I need more information about Marcos." "What did he do?" Marion thought for a moment. "He was a businessman. He had his own company. He was involved in export and import. He traveled a lot." Chris nodded. "Okay, I need more information about his partners. Who are they? Where are they?" Marion didn't know. "He never told me about his business. He said it was dangerous." Chris nodded. "I understand, but we need something. Maybe he had some documents or some contacts." Marion thought for a moment. "I don't know. I didn't see anything. He kept everything secret." Chris was disappointed, but he didn't give up. "Okay, then we have to start from scratch," he said. "I'll look for information on the internet. I'll look for information about his company, about his partners, and you have to be careful. Don't leave the house. Don't talk to strangers. Don't answer phone calls from unknown numbers. You're in danger." Adam and Marion immediately agreed because Chris was very convincing. He was a professional, knew exactly what he was doing, and became their only hope. Chris left the house, got in his car, and drove to the city, immediately getting to work. He was extremely cautious, constantly watching the road, and ready for the possibility that he was being followed. Meanwhile, Adam, Mark, Marion, Emma, and Lucas sat in the house. Although they were still afraid, they felt united, supporting each other. They talked about what they would do when this nightmare was over, and dreamed of a normal life where they would be completely safe. A few hours later, Chris returned, his face serious. "I found something," he began. "Marcos had a partner named Victor. This man is very influential and involved in illegal activities. He is very dangerous. I found his address, and I think we should go to him." Adam looked at Chris, feeling fear wash over him. "Are you crazy? That's dangerous," he exclaimed. Chris nodded calmly. "I know, but it's the only way. We have to find out what they want and where the money is hidden. We can't just sit here and wait for them to find us." Adam thought about it, not wanting to take the risk, but realizing that Chris was right. They had to act to protect the children. "All right," Adam finally agreed. "We'll go, but we'll proceed with the utmost caution." Chris nodded in response. Before they left, Mark offered his help. "I can go with you." Adam, however, insisted. "No, you need to stay and protect Emma and Lucas." Mark, though disappointed, understood his words. "I bet." Adam and Chris got in the car and set off. It was a long drive until they entered a luxurious neighborhood. Victor's house, majestic and imposing, was surrounded by a high fence. They stopped at a safe distance so as not to be noticed, and quietly made their way to the house. Walking around it, they saw that the main entrance was locked, but there was an open window on the first floor. Without hesitation, they climbed over the fence, approached the house, and, once inside, felt as if they had entered the enemy's lair. Carefully entering the spacious living room, they found themselves surrounded by expensive furniture, paintings on the walls, and a crystal chandelier sparkling in the moonlight. There were some documents on the table, which Chris quickly leafed through. "Just a business package, nothing important," he whispered. Their main focus was the study, the place where, in their opinion, Victor kept his most secret secrets. Finally, they found it. The door to the study was closed but not locked. Chris carefully opened it, and they entered the spacious room. A large desk stood in the center of the room, and bookshelves lined the walls. Chris went to the desk and began examining it, opening the drawers, but they were empty. Adam was overcome with disappointment. "Nothing," Chris whispered. Adam wasn't about to give up. He began searching through the bookcases, touching each book. Suddenly, one very thick and heavy book caught his attention. Adam picked it up and was surprised to find that it was locked with a miniature lock. This was clearly no ordinary book. Adam guessed that it was a hiding place and showed it to Chris. Chris, expressing surprise, took the book in his hands and said, "You found it." The attempt to open the book failed. The lock was too complicated. Chris, looking anxiously at his watch, said, "We have to go, we're running out of time." Adam nodded in agreement. They carefully picked up the book and headed for the exit, but suddenly there was a noise. Someone had entered the house. It was Victor, returning home. Adam and Chris pressed themselves against the furniture, trying to remain unnoticed. Victor walked past them without noticing them and entered his study. Hearing his voice on the phone, they held their breath. "I'm back. They didn't find anything. They definitely can't be here. They don't know where I am. They don't know who I am." They looked at each other and came to the conclusion that although they were safe now, they couldn't leave without answers. Approaching the office door, they listened. Victor was talking about money, people, and some place. "They don't know where the money is hidden. I put it where no one will find it. I won't tell them. I won't tell anyone." Adam and Chris were convinced that the money really existed, but the question of its location remained open. Victor's voice trembled with panic. "I have to leave. We need to act quickly. Canada is my only hope. No one will find me there." Adam and Chris realized that time was running out. They had to find the money before Victor left to ensure his family's safety. With determination, they left the house, got in the car, and set off, ready to do anything for the new family that now needed their protection so badly. Adam and Chris were returning to the hideout, and every mile of the road stretched endlessly before them. The car was filled with a tense silence, broken only by the rumble of the engine. Adam clutched the mysterious book in his hands, feeling the weight of the metal lock. His gaze fell on Chris, who was focused on the road, and he realized that time was running out. Victor would soon escape, and with him would go the last hope of a normal life for Marion, Lucas, and, above all, Emma. When they arrived home, Mark, Marion, Emma, and Lucas were already waiting for them. Mark, noticing the serious expressions on his friends' faces, immediately asked, "Has something happened?" Adam went to the kitchen, put the book on the table, and told them everything. Marion, listening attentively to his words, felt fear piercing her. She had no idea about her husband's activities, and now understood why he was so cautious. "Victor is planning to escape," Adam said. "We need to open this book before it's too late." Chris approached the table and carefully examined the lock. It was truly complex. "We'll need a special tool to open it. I can't do it without it," he admitted. Adam felt disappointed. "What are we going to do?" Mark asked. Chris thought for a moment, then replied, "I know someone in town who can help us. He'll definitely be able to open this lock." Adam immediately agreed, realizing that there was no time to lose. Chris called his acquaintance, who agreed to meet with them tomorrow morning. Marion approached the table and examined the book. She recognized it immediately. "It's Marcos's diary," she whispered. "He never left it unattended." Adam was puzzled. "A diary? But why is it locked?" Marion shrugged. "I don't know." Adam felt that this circumstance was of great importance. Marcos's diary could hold the answers to all their questions. They spent the entire evening discussing their plan. Adam, Chris, and Mark would take the book, and Marion would watch the children. Everyone was determined, ready to do whatever it took to uncover the truth and protect their family. The next morning, Adam and Chris went into town, exercising extreme caution, as they knew they might be being watched. They arrived in town and quickly found the house Chris had pointed out. It was a small, old house. When they knocked, the door was opened by an old man with long hair and a beard, who looked like a wizard. He looked at them closely and immediately said, "I know why you're here. Come in. I will help you." Adam and Chris looked at each other in surprise and entered the house. The room was full of old things, paintings hung on the walls, and dusty volumes lay on the shelves. The old man walked over to a table where tools were laid out and said to Adam, "Please give me your book." Adam handed him the book. The old man studied it and said, "The lock is very complicated. I will need some time. Please wait in the other room." Adam and Chris went to the other room to wait. They were very excited, wondering what they would find inside the book. All the way there, they had hoped to get answers. After a few hours, the old man returned. He looked very tired, but he was holding an open diary in his hands. "I did it," he said, "but it was very difficult. I don't know what I found. I don't know what it is." Adam and Chris ran up to him. Adam took the open book, which contained some drawings and incomprehensible symbols. They immediately realized that they were dealing with a cipher. "What is it?" Adam asked. The old man shook his head. "It's some kind of cipher. I can't decipher it." Adam was disappointed. "What should we do?" he asked. The old man thought for a moment. "I know someone who can help you. He can decipher it." Adam and Chris were thrilled. Adam and Chris left the old master's house, taking Marcos's diary, filled with mysterious symbols, with them. Disappointment, but not despair, settled in their hearts. They were sure they were moving in the right direction. Their path led to a new person who, according to the old man, would be able to decipher the code. They got into the car. Adam glanced at the book. "What could it mean?" he muttered. Chris just shrugged. "I don't know, but we'll find out soon." The long-awaited town appeared on the horizon, and they finally found the address they were looking for, an old, abandoned house. Getting out of the car, Adam felt his heart racing. Fear gripped him, but he knew he had to complete this risky task for the sake of his family. Raising his hand, Adam knocked on the door. The door was opened by a young woman with long hair and piercing green eyes. Her gaze was penetrating, and she said, "I know why you're here. Come in." Adam and Chris were amazed. Inside the house, they were greeted by an atmosphere of antiquity. The shelves were lined with books, and the walls were decorated with maps and diagrams. A woman approached them and, introducing herself as Catherine, said, "I know what you are looking for. You are looking for answers. I can help you, but only if you trust me." Adam nodded in agreement. "We trust you," he confirmed. Catherine smiled and took the book they had brought with them. She studied it, and her face became serious. "This is a very complex cipher. I've never seen anything like it, but I'll try to decipher it." Adam and Chris waited anxiously. The uncertainty of what they would find in the book filled them with trepidation. They hoped the book would reveal the answers to their questions. A few hours later, Catherine returned, tired but with a spark of joy in her eyes. "I did it," she proclaimed. "I deciphered it. It's not a normal code, it's a map." Adam and Chris were stunned. "A map?" Adam repeated, not believing his ears. "Yes," Catherine confirmed. "A map that shows where the hidden riches are stored." Adam and Chris were thrilled. They were so close to solving the mystery. Catherine handed them the map, which showed a diagram of an old building. The map clearly indicated the location where she believed the money was hidden. "It's an old warehouse located in the suburbs," Catherine explained. Adam and Chris were overcome with a sense of urgency. They had to act quickly and find the money before Victor flew away. Catherine was grateful for the help she had received. She admitted that she understood the seriousness of the situation, but still wanted to help because she was kind by nature. Together, they got in the car and set off. The road to the outskirts of the city was long, but they finally reached an old, abandoned warehouse surrounded by a high fence. Opening the gate and looking inside, they found that the warehouse was empty. Desperate to find something valuable, Adam and Chris suddenly heard a suspicious noise. They froze, listened, and saw movement. Inside were the two men they had met in the forest clearing, and now they were eagerly searching the room as if looking for hidden treasure. Adam and Chris hid behind boxes and began to watch. One of the men was nervously searching for something, his face contorted with excitement, and each unsuccessful search brought him closer to rage. The second man, on the contrary, stood calmly and intently. His imperturbability concealed a threat. Adam and Chris immediately understood. This man was the leader. They had no doubt that these were the ones who had tried to bury Marion and Lucas alive. Suddenly, one of them stumbled upon something interesting. It was a massive, heavy book, very similar in appearance to the one Adam and Chris had found in Victor's house. The man immediately opened it and burst out laughing. Inside, just like in their book, there were strange drawings and symbols. "What a find! I found it," he exclaimed, full of excitement. Adam and Chris were stunned, realizing that they were looking at a new code. Why would they have two identical books? What did it mean? These thoughts raced through their minds, giving them no peace. They were at a dead end, not knowing how to proceed. Adam and Chris froze behind the boxes, watching as the two men happily examined the book they had found. Adam felt cold sweat running down his back. They were trapped. These people were very dangerous, and now they knew they were in the right place, but they still had no idea of their presence. Thoughts of Marion and the children flashed through Adam's mind, and he knew he had to get out of there no matter what it took. Chris nudged him quietly, pointing to a small door on the opposite side of the warehouse. It was probably an emergency exit. The men, engrossed in the book, didn't notice them. This was their chance. Chris gestured to Adam that they would have to move quietly, moving from box to box, using them as cover. They began their slow and careful passage, each step accompanied by an almost imperceptible breath. Crawling across the littered floor, they hid behind tall stacks of boxes. Adam's heart was beating so hard that he felt like it would burst out of his chest. They were close to their goal when one of the men suddenly turned around. Adam and Chris froze, pressed against the wall. The man looked straight at them but didn't notice. He just turned away and continued his conversation with his partner. Both breathed a sigh of relief. When they reached the emergency exit, they found that the door was jammed but not locked. Chris easily opened it with a handy tool, and they went outside, trying to be as quiet as possible. The darkness of night became their cover, and when they reached the car, they drove off without daring to look back. When they returned to the hideout, they were met by an agitated Marion and Mark. "Are you okay?" Marion asked. "What happened?" Adam and Chris sat down at the table and told them everything in detail. What they had seen in the warehouse, about the two men, and about the second book. Marion was shocked. "Another one?" she exclaimed. "But why?" Adam just shrugged. "We don't know, but we have to find out." Adam put the diary on the table and thoughtfully examined the pages covered with strange symbols. "This is all too unusual," he muttered. "How did they get a copy? And isn't it all too confusing?" Chris frowned and replied, "Maybe Marcos has come up with a real puzzle. Perhaps these books are only a small part of his grand plan, and they contain clues that we are not yet able to decipher." Chris called Catherine and shared the news about the second book with her. Catherine was shocked. "That's impossible," she exclaimed. "Marcos's diary was one of a kind. There can't be any more like it. If this is true, it's very dangerous." Chris tried to understand what she meant and asked her about her assumptions. "I don't know," she replied, "but I think it could be the key to solving the whole situation." They spent the entire evening discussing what this could mean. They came to the conclusion that these weren't just two books. It was some kind of elaborate game, an unsolved puzzle. Perhaps Marcos wanted his books to be found. Perhaps he was counting on someone to figure out his secret. They realized that they had to be as careful and cautious as possible. The next morning, while Emma and Lucas were playing in the living room and Marion was cooking, Adam, Mark, and Chris found themselves in the kitchen. There were two books on the table, Marcos's diary, which they had received from the old man, and the one they had seen with the two men in the warehouse. Does it really matter? Mark wondered. Why did they have the same book? Adam was deep in thought. I don't know, maybe each book holds a piece of the puzzle. Chris nodded in agreement. That makes sense. He was a smart man, he couldn't have just left his legacy behind. Maybe he left some clues. Marion, overhearing their conversation, approached them. Do you think my husband did this on purpose? She asked. Adam looked at her and replied, I don't know, but that's the only thing that can explain the existence of these books. Maybe he wanted someone to find them and solve his mystery. Marion was shocked. It turned out that her husband was a man with much deeper and more complex motives than she had thought. They decided to turn to Catherine, as she was their only hope. Chris called her and shared the information about the second book. Catherine expressed surprise. That's very unusual, she said. I've never encountered anything like this before. But perhaps this is the key to solving the mystery. You need to bring me your book. I need to analyze it again. Adam and Chris agreed and decided to go to Catherine. When they arrived at Catherine's house, she was already waiting for them. Her face was serious as she took the book and began to study it, examining the drawings and symbols and writing something down in a notebook. Adam and Chris watched silently, not daring to move. After a few hours, Catherine looked up from the book. I think I figured it out, she announced. These books are not a regular code. They are a map. Adam and Chris's eyes lit up. They were so close to solving the mystery. Catherine spread out a map in front of them, which showed some kind of city. In the center of the map was a marked spot where, according to her, the money was hidden. It's an old museum, Catherine explained, located in the heart of the city, very ancient, and no one knows about it. Adam and Chris realized that time was not on their side. They had to act decisively and find the money before Victor had a chance to disappear. After thanking Catherine, they learned that she also wanted to help, despite all the risks. She was a truly kind person. Together, they got into the car and set off for the city center. The journey was long, but they finally arrived at an old museum that looked abandoned and dilapidated, surrounded by a high fence. Looking through the gate, they found that the museum was empty. Adam and Chris, disappointed, were about to leave when they heard a noise from inside. They tensed up, moved closer, and saw two men whom they had already encountered in the forest and in the warehouses. The men were in the museum, actively searching for something, exercising extreme caution, unaware that Adam and Chris were nearby. Hiding behind boxes, they began to observe. One of the men was nervously searching for something, his face contorted with feverish excitement, and he seemed ready to explode with frustration at not being able to find what he was looking for. The second man stood completely unperturbed, focused on one thing. His calmness concealed a threat. Adam and Chris immediately realized that this man was the leader, and that these were the very people who had tried to bury Marion and Lucas alive. Adam and Chris pressed themselves against an old display case and watched the two men silently searching the museum. Adam's heart was pounding wildly. These people were very close, just a step behind. Obviously, they had also deciphered the code, found the second book, and now, like Adam, were looking for the same thing. The race for it had begun. Chris quietly nudged Adam and pointed to the door at the other end of the hall. The men were absorbed in their search, and this was their chance. Chris gestured that they needed to move quietly, using the large exhibits as cover. They began to move, each step light and almost inaudible. Crawling across the littered floor, pressed against the walls, the men were so absorbed in their search that they didn't notice anything going on around them. When they reached the door, they found it locked, but Chris deftly took out his tools and picked the lock in the blink of an eye. Without wasting any time, they rushed outside, ran to the car, and drove away without looking back. Even though they were safe, the feeling of danger did not leave them. Back at the hideout, Adam and Chris met Mark, Marion, and the children. "Are you okay?" Marion asked. "What happened?" Adam and Chris sat down at the table and explained everything in detail. About the museum, the two men, and their search for money. Marion was shocked. "Did they also figure out the code?" she asked, unable to hide her surprise. Adam nodded in confirmation. "Yes, it's a real race." The diary was lying on the table. Adam looked at it. "We need to understand what this means," he whispered. "Why do they have the same book? And how did they manage to crack the code?" Chris was deep in thought. "Maybe it's some kind of game. Marcos may have wanted these books to be found on purpose. He may have left us secret clues that we haven't noticed yet." They spent the entire previous night discussing their plan, and the next day Adam and Chris went to see Catherine. Both of them understood that they might be under surveillance, so they behaved as cautiously as possible, ready for anything to get to the truth. Catherine was already waiting for them. Her expression was serious. She took both books and, immersed in their study, stared intently at the drawings and symbols, making notes in her notebook. Adam and Chris waited silently, not taking their eyes off her. After a few hours, Catherine looked up from the book and said, "I think I've figured it out. These aren't just two separate books," she continued. "They are two parts of a whole. The first book is like a map, and the second is the key to deciphering it." Adam and Chris waited eagerly for her to continue. "A key?" Adam asked. "Yes," Catherine replied. "The second book contains information on how to open the hiding place, the password that will unlock it." Catherine was grateful for the help. Despite all the risks, she also wanted to lend a helping hand, because kindness lived in her heart. With firm determination, they got in the car and set off, ready to do anything for their new, beloved family. Upon returning to the hideout, Adam and Chris immediately shared their discovery with Mark and Marion. The second book was not just a copy, but served as a key, a password that would open the hiding place. Now they knew much more than their pursuers, but the location of the hiding place where the money was kept remained unknown. Marion, hearing about the key and the password, thought for a moment. Marcos always said that our secret password was the date we met. Only he and I knew that. Adam looked at her. That's the key. But what about the map? Marion shrugged. He always said that place was ours. It was our first home. Adam realized they were talking about the old house where they had lived. It was their first home. It was the place where they could find the answers. They got into the car, and this time, Mark accompanied them. All three were determined to find the truth and protect their family from danger. The journey was long, but they finally reached the old neighborhood. Without thinking twice, they found an abandoned, dilapidated house, which they believed was their only chance. Getting out of the car, they quietly made their way to the house, trying to remain unnoticed. Inside, it was empty, but they were sure they would find what they needed. They began searching all the rooms, the kitchen, the bathroom, but to no avail. Adam was disappointed, thinking that this was the end. They were about to leave when they heard a noise from inside. Adam and Chris immediately hid and saw two men. They were the same people they had met in the forest, at the warehouse, and at the museum. They had also found this place. The men were agitated and angry that they couldn't find what they were looking for. "We can't find it. Where is it? I know he hid it here," one of them shouted. His partner, keeping his cool, replied, "We have to be careful. He could have set traps." Adam and Chris exchanged glances, realizing they had to act quickly before they were discovered. They rushed around the house, checking every room, looking in corners, in the pantry, and even under old furniture, but everything remained empty. Suddenly, Adam's gaze fell on an old painting hanging on the wall. It depicted two people. Adam immediately recognized them as Marcos and Marion. Looking closely, he noticed a small symbol on the painting, similar to the one in the book. Adam realized it was a hiding place. He ran to the painting, quickly took it down, and saw a wall behind it with a secret door. It was locked, but Adam remembered the password Marion had given him. He entered it, and the door clicked open. Inside was a hiding place full of documents and very large wads of cash. At that moment, two men burst into the room. When they saw Adam and the money, they flew into a rage. "We found it," one of them shouted. Adam and Chris were ready. They knew they had to protect their family, so they rushed into battle. Strong and determined, they fought 2 against 2. The fight was long. Finally, Adam struck one of the men, and he fell unconscious. Then Chris hit the second man, and he too collapsed to the floor. Adam and Chris were in shock and couldn't believe they had succeeded. They quickly gathered the money and documents, rushed out of the house, got into the car, and drove away. Now they were safe, but they knew they still had a long way to go. However, to protect their family, they were ready for anything. Several years passed. Adam, Emma, Marion, and Lucas lived in a new house. The money they found helped them start a new life. They bought a house, a car, and started their own business. They were all happy and finally felt completely safe. Mark and Chris became their best friends. They often came to visit, and together they recalled those incredible events, how they found the money, and how they fought the criminals. They laughed, happy that they were still together. The two men were caught, convicted, and sent to prison. They were punished for everything they had done. Adam was happy that the nightmare was over. He realized that life is not only about struggle, but also about love, friendship, and, most importantly, family. Adam and Marion were together and loved each other. Their large, friendly family finally found peace and happiness.